Hello, my name is Peter Sumpton. I'm a mentor for Professional Academy, and I'm here to guide you through my top 5 tips for smashing your apprenticeship. So this first one isn't really a tip, but it's a welcome to your apprenticeship. This is your time to learn and shine. And to do that, you need to know what this apprenticeship is all about. Now, Professional Academy can provide you with documentation that outlines everything you'll need to know about your apprenticeship. But there's a lot of words in there. What I've created is a scaled down version which highlights the specific points that will really help you through this apprenticeship. It highlights things like the important parts of your endpoint assessment. We'll come on to that later. The length of your apprenticeship, very important to know. And there's a few other bits in there that may help you know and understand what is required of you, what we will help you do, and also what's required from your employer. Number one, mentors are there to help. Now, I'm going to expand on that and say that technically there are 3 areas where we can really help you. Number one is in the workshops. Go to these workshops, whether they're online or in person, and really get engaged. Ask questions. There are no stupid questions. If you're thinking about it, you can guarantee somebody else wants the answer to that question as well. Number two is your skills coach meetings or mentor visits, again, online or in person. This is a great time to ask those questions that you forgot to ask in the workshop, but also run through everything to do with your apprenticeship. Your mentor will make sure you are up to speed with everything on your apprenticeship. There's a lot of detail that goes on in the background that makes sure you are on track to complete on time. And the final thing is when we catch up with your employer. Now, this is an employer review so that we can get to the bottom of how we can help you better, how the employer can help you better, and your strengths and weaknesses so we can make you a better marketer. Number two, KSB tracking. If you don't know what KSBs are, you certainly will by the end of the apprenticeship. They're called knowledge, skills, and behaviors. And each one is touched upon throughout your entire apprenticeship. Each workshop, each assignment, each presentation is designed to cover every single KSB, which is a requirement for you to cover on your apprenticeship. Now, this is a little trick here that I think is hugely beneficial. Create a spreadsheet with all your KSBs on. Create another column with evidence in it. Link each KSB to at least one piece of evidence that highlights you have done that knowledge, skill, or behavior throughout your apprenticeship. And when it comes to your endpoint assessment, you'll have a comprehensive list of everything you've covered throughout your apprenticeship, which goes towards your endpoint assessment. Remember, the endpoint assessment is marked on your knowledge, skills, behaviors. Number three, off the job learning. This is the bit where most apprentices get unstuck, the off the job learning. First and foremost, it should be 20% of your apprenticeship, which technically means it's a full day a week. Now, how do we get up to that number? The best way to describe what off the job learning is in 2 ways. One, if you look at your job specification and what you're supposed to be doing, if it's not on there, it's off the job learning. And number two, if you don't go to work to do this particular thing, the chances are it's off the job learning. Now, this isn't to say that if you have recurring meetings, each one of those will be off the job learning. 'Cause let's face it, we don't go to work to go to meetings. It's a necessary evil. But perhaps the first time you're in that meeting, then that is off the job learning because you've never done it before. Also, use your off the job learning to expand your knowledge and get into areas and get into places in your organization that you necessarily wouldn't be able to if you weren't on this apprenticeship. For example, you could do some shadowing with finance. If it's manufacturing, you could spend a day on the production line, knowing and understanding how you build the product. It is pretty endless off the job learning. But remember, to document, because that's where people get unstuck. They don't document, they come to the end of the apprenticeship and they have a lot of admin to do. So keep that up to speed. Make a note in your diary of everything you're doing, and then you can track back and look back to see what you've done and add it to your off the job learning. Number 4, your company. Make sure you're getting the support you need from your company. Make sure your line manager, HR manager, or whoever gave you the opportunity to get on this apprenticeship is there to help, support, and guide you. They can help you a lot with off the job learning, with making sure you cover all the KSBs and evidence each one. There's a huge difference in those apprentices that get the help and support they need from their employer and those that don't. So please highlight it to us if you're not. We can talk to the employer, you can talk to the employer, and that is why going back, we have those employer meetings. It's hugely important that we're all on the same page for your benefit. And finally, the endpoint assessment. Everything is gearing up to this endpoint assessment: the workshops, the mentor visits, the skills coach meetings, your KSBs, your off the job learning. The way to think about this is that if you were running a marathon, you wouldn't just get up one day and run the marathon. You could, but you might come a little unstuck. Instead, what you would do is train. And this whole apprenticeship is training you for the end point assessment. So it might feel like there's a lot of admin sometimes. It might feel like you're not quite sure why you're doing these things, but it is all important and it is training your body and your mind to run that marathon or to complete the end point assessment. No, smash the end point assessment. That is absolutely key. When it comes to the end point assessment, this will usually have some kind of live project. Going back to having your employer on your side, it's hugely important. This project has to be something meaty. It has to be something you take charge of. If you're in a cyclical business, you can probably work out what time of year that project will have to happen. So you get a good inkling of what that project might actually be. If it isn't, then depending on what level you're doing, we've got a fair few months to go before we even have to think about that project. But it's always good to have it in the back of your mind what that project might be. The other elements of the endpoint assessment will depend on which level you're working at. But it's critical that we can evidence what we've learned. Remember, KSB is an evidence. We can speak eloquently about this evidence, and we can present our workings, our findings, our projects, our marketing skills and abilities. We can have those discussions, we can present, and then, depending on what level you are, there might be a teeny tiny test, but don't worry about that. We will absolutely smash that test when it comes to it. And that's the top 5 tips from me. If you have any questions, please get in touch. I'll happily talk you through any part of your apprenticeship. Enjoy it, learn from it, because this is the foundational knowledge that will skyrocket your career within marketing.